Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fantasy Gods. I'm Brett Chaves, as always, here with Ben Pope. Ben, the Super Bowl, it's come and gone, man. We're now moving into bigger and better things here the fantasy season, especially with the NHL and hockey.
Oh yeah, we're finally moving away from football, not just hockey, but we're also amid the fantasy basketball season here with the All-Star break just passing us. So I think it's really appropriate, hence our jerseys and everything, to talk about some of the standouts from each league in their first half.
Yeah, that's 100%. I'll be talking about a couple guys from the NHL and hockey who have really shined through the first half of the season past the All-Star break. And
Yeah, I'll be covering a few guys from this basketball season that have really stood out compared to the average draft position at the beginning of the year.
absolutely. So let's get things started. We're starting with the hockey side here. I'm going to be talking about Austin Matthews, the centerman from the Toronto Maple Leafs, hence the jersey for today's episode. Austin Matthews, just to put it short and sweet, is one of the best players in all of hockey right now. 34 goals, 28 assists, and fantasy is averaging about 20 points per game, which is absolutely unheard of for a fantasy player right now. Matthews is able to elevate the Maple Leafs to a certain perspective that not a lot of people have seen in the past this far. They took him earlier on in the draft, and they paid off fantastically with Austin Matthews. So this is just one of the guys in fantasy hockey that is exemplified as one of the premier players. Look, when we talk about fantasy football, you talk about your Derrick Henrys, your Pat Mahomes, your Travis Kelce's. In fantasy hockey, this is Austin Matthews. And to me, there's no other person to talk about Matthews first here. So just to wrap it up, a +7 plus minus on the season in hockey. Stud player, Matthews.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anyone of that caliber that I'm going to be talking about today, but I still think we've got some quality players on the basketball side of things. I'm going to be starting off with Darius Garland, who's a guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers, pretty much serving as the number one option for the fourth-seeded Cavaliers currently. He's been an incredible player, drafted right around the 60s and 70s in most ESPN formats, currently ranked the ninth point guard amongst point guards on ESPN formats, talking about 5 versus 5 leagues, and he's been incredible, averaging 20 points, seven assists, and three and a half rebounds. He's been doing phenomenal. He's been pretty much the number one option, like I mentioned, for a kind of out of nowhere Cavaliers team that has been really good, working alongside Jared Allen and breakout star in his first year, Evan Mobley. So Darius Garland has been doing phenomenal here for fantasy basketball stars.
Yeah, Garland's been one of those players that you can rely on so far in your rosters. I can say that as well, following fantasy basketball this season. And the Cavaliers, like you mentioned, have really been a team that just came out of nowhere. And Mobley has just been one of the highlights as well. So really star-studded team there for fantasy. So moving on back to hockey here, I have the next guy. This is a rookie. May not necessarily be the most producing in fantasy, but has really come onto the scene as someone that's been a sleeper in most rounds. And that's Moe Cider, the defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings. Moe Cider has really come onto the scene out of nowhere here. He was drafted by Detroit in one of the most recent drafts here, and he's really come onto the scene as their top defenseman already. 5 goals, 32 assists. He's averaging about 10 fantasy points per game, and he's already up for a candidacy here for the Vezina Trophy, rather not the Vezina Trophy, the Calder Trophy. I can't believe how much Moe Cider's done in just a short span of time, especially with Lucas Raymond and Dylan Larkin as well. So hats off to this kid. He's still at a 0 plus minus, but I think he can accomplish way more than what he's already done.
Sounds like a great player and a very underrated one at that. So I'll be talking about my last player here for the NBA. Talking about Miles Bridges, an all-star for the Charlotte Hornets. He's been phenomenal at the power forward position, which is pretty usually not the most spruce with superstars. You've got LeBron James and guys at the top with Giannis and everything like that. But Miles Bridges has really come into his own. He's ranked among the top 12 in ESPN rankings at the forward position, doing a phenomenal job for a really underrated Charlotte team that really can elevate their game here in the second half. But he's averaging 20 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists. So pretty much the flip of what Garland's doing with rebounds and assists. He's been pretty much the solid number 2 scoring option behind LaMelo Ball on a great Hornets offense. And he's been a really undervalued player, considering that he pretty much wasn't even being drafted in 8 to 10 player leagues. So he's a really great value here in NBA fantasy leagues.
Yeah, I actually have Bridges on my fantasy team this year, and he's been impactful, like you mentioned. Hornets have just been one of those teams that they're slowly developing, but you can really see the star talent that's developing with Bridges, LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward. It's all coming together in Charlotte, and Bridges is obviously just the start of it.
Yeah, I think once they get their consistency, they're really going to hit their stride. Hopefully it's in the second half of the season in an East that's pretty much up for grabs at this point.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Well, that does it here on Fantasy Gods. We will see you next time, and as always,
Keep calm, play fantasy.